Hi, everyone. Welcome back to The Mill. I'm your host, Rachel Ballatori, the founder and CEO of Mill & Co. With me today is a wonderful powerhouse woman, Katrina Kowalski. Katrina's pronouns are she, her, and hers. Katrina, thank you so much for being here with me today.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
Of course. Let's learn a little bit about Katrina. So after experiencing burnout in the mortgage industry and witnessing her husband endure an IRS audit due to an unlicensed tax preparer, she decided to return to her accounting roots. However, she knew she didn't want to work with large corporations or high net worth individuals. Instead, she chose to focus on everyday business owners, those passionate about their work but unfamiliar with how taxes fit into the bigger picture. That decision changed everything. Since then, she has never looked back and loves seeing the anxiety leave people's demeanor when they start to understand that taxes are a part of everyday life. And if we understand them, we can work with them. Katrina, you know what's so fascinating? I went to Johns Hopkins University, great school. I had a major and a minor in business, major in psychology. Lovely. I went to the academic advising office almost monthly, my junior and senior year. Like, hello, hi, what do I do with my life? At no point in my entire collegiate journey, and even when I got my first job, did anyone talk to me about taxes. And it's terrifying. And now as a business owner, 7 years in, I'm still learning things. And so I'm really in awe of what you do and have built, and that you're really focusing on just kind of everyday business owners and not just, the high net worth and the large businesses. Because we're the little guys that kind of need the help the most.
Well, and I think you're the ones that get left behind, right?
Yeah.
Like everybody thinks they want bigger, better clients. And I think there's something to be said for those that are just really passionate about what they do and they don't understand how their numbers work into it. So
Right.
it's twofold. One, tax comes into it, and I love the tax piece of it, but you also need someone who can help you read your numbers every day so you know where your business is going.
Right. Yeah. What I established really early on in my business was I knew what I didn't know, and I went and find people who did.
Well, and I think you're in the minority then, because I
Yeah.
think so many people think of it as a cost and they're like, I can't really afford that right now. And my argument is you can't not afford it because if you don't know what you're doing, mistakes can be huge. Um, and and also your numbers speak to you, right? Like even today, I was looking at our numbers and I was saying to my business partner, I was like, no, we're pretty much in line where we were last year at this time. Like, we're good. We're moving forward. It's tax season. This is when we do the most of our business. So we are on track.
Yeah.
And if we hadn't done that, I wouldn't have known where we were at.
Right. Yeah. So with that, tell me a little bit about yourself and your journey. What brought you to where you are today?
Um, Gosh, I don't know. I took a meandering path.
As we all do.
I took an accounting class in high school and I was just like, this is kind of cool. And then I realized I always loved puzzles and I was like, wait a minute, this is just a puzzle. It's got numbers instead of pieces. So I liked that premise to it. And then I went to business school and I figured out being an accounting major, whether it's right or not, people think that you can do anything when you have an accounting degree. So I was like, well, I don't really know 100% what I want to do, but I know with an accounting degree, I can go wherever I want. And so that's kind of where I went. I got into the mortgage industry, like you said. I loved what I was doing, but got burnt out. And I was like, oh, what else can I do?
Mm.
So here I am. And like I said, every day is different. So that's what I love about my job. Every day is different. Every person is different. Every puzzle is different.
And you mentioned burnout, and I think that's something that people don't talk about that much. I'd love for you to kind of describe what that was like for you.
I just suddenly hated going to my job. So I had worked really hard. I was working for one of the top mortgage professionals at Countrywide, which is no longer around. Um, I got married and went on my honeymoon and was 2 weeks away from my computer, and it was like everything blew up. Like people, there was no team. So it was just, if I didn't do it, nobody did it. And I was like, oh,
Mhm.
I don't think this is what I want to do going forward. So I was really lucky. I went to Bentley University and they had a program for alumni where you could go back and kind of
Mm.
figure out your life, quote unquote, and what you wanted to do. It was a 7 week course. So I went in and took that and said, oh, yeah, I do still want to do accounting in some way. So here I am.
Yeah. And I think, I mentor a lot of young women in particular from Johns Hopkins, and I've talked to a lot of entrepreneurs, budding startup owners about burnout. And really that's kind of that pivotal point for a lot of people that causes change. You almost kind of hit this moment of friction. And there are some people that it takes longer to get out of that moment of friction, but every successful entrepreneur I've ever spoken with, myself included, has recognized burnout and taken action sooner than later. And so for anyone that's watching, if you are feeling like Katrina and you go away and you're like, why am I the only one keeping the walls standing? It might be time to check in with yourself. Maybe that's your cue to go take a vacation.
Yeah, and I think it's one of the things we as women especially think we have to figure out everything, and life is just not figure outable. I mean, you got to just roll with the punches and figure out where you're at, and
Yeah.
you're going to be at different places at different times in your life. And I think that's one of the things I would tell my younger self is
Mm.
it's okay. Like, you don't have it figured out. You can pivot. I have clients that are in their second and third careers and they're doing really well and they're super successful. So there is no right or wrong answer.
Yeah. What's a fun fact about you? Something unexpected. What do people not know? Let's really crack
I'm
in.
kind of boring, but I would say I use this in my networking group and nobody guessed it. So I love to cross stitch. It's kind of my creative outlet.
Yeah.
So my mom and my grandma did it, and I have a tree skirt I made. I made stockings for my kids. It's the only way I can stay awake to watch TV. I'm not. I am a body in motion, and so when I sit down,
Yep.
it's usually like crash.
That's a very fascinating skill. Wow. For you. Yeah. I don't think that I have anything really interesting about me. Anyway, back to you. So, as a CPA, you're working with people. What do you love the most? If you could pinpoint it down to one thing beyond tax preparation, which is so thrilling and sexy.
No, you know what I love? I love learning about people's businesses and how they work, and then we can work backwards to talk about the numbers. So, one of my favorite stories was I know nothing about hockey, or I didn't at the time, but I took on a client that ran a pretty successful youth hockey league. And I
Mm.
remember him coming in and talking to me about like, he was rapid fire at me, like bantams and peewees and all this stuff. And I was like, whoa, 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 we have to slow down here. Like, I don't know what we're talking about. You got to dumb it down for me. Like, can we put it all in order? And it was actually really interesting. Like the accounting piece of it really tied in. And so once I understood how it worked and that tryouts were in, March and we don't start until September and there was timing issues and all of these things, I'm like, oh, okay, we can make this work. So now
Mm.
I know a little bit more about hockey, but um, I think that's with every business. We don't know what they're doing and everybody does things a little bit differently. So it's
Yeah.
it's good to see kind of where they're coming from, and I like to meet people where they're at.
Yeah. It's interesting. At Mill and Co, we are industry agnostic with our clients. And early on, I had a pseudo mentor tell me that if I didn't niche down to one industry, we'd fail.
Oh gosh,
I think
yep.
I'd shared that story with you before. It's been it's been 7 years now that we've been in business and fully industry agnostic. And I say to clients the same thing. I feel more empowered, stronger, and smarter because I'm understanding different industries from janitorial sanitation to aviation engine repairs to high net worth wealth management to independent chefs and everything in between. And to me, that is what I get really excited about at work. And I love that you get to experience that within what you do.
No, I 100% agree. It's funny because so many people are saying the same thing to us. You've got to find a niche. And I'm like, but
Okay.
I don't know that I want to. And
But
so
I'm
she actually challenged me the last time. She was like, okay, but why do you not want to? And I said exactly what you said, because I'd be bored. I like learning what other people do. So to be continued. I'm not
yeah,
there yet.
yeah. We'll circle back in a year on this podcast. And so you're working with small business owners, which I love. I'm a small business owner. What are some financial missteps that you see most commonly happening with small business owners? And if anyone is a small business owner watching this podcast, maybe some like words to the wise.
So you got to create a budget. People hate the word budget. They hate it. They're like, oh, it's like a diet and I've got to cut back on everything. And no, like if you don't have a budget, you don't know where you're going to be. So every year you've got to say, I kind of work backwards. I'm like, this is what I want to make. How do I get there? Like What are the things I have? What are my expenses? And then I'm just filling in the holes. Like,
Right.
okay, I need software this year. I need project management software. So we're putting that in. So if I didn't know what my numbers were, I wouldn't know where I could spend more money or
Right.
need to pull back. So the
And
budget is a tool.
why do you think it's challenging for small business owners to set a budget?
Well, I think it's challenging for any single person to set a budget. Like you say the word budget, and literally people are like putting the X up, like, nope, not doing it. I don't want to be hamstringed
Yeah.
or hamstrung in there. I think one of the things I learned, I had a coach at one point, a mindset coach. I've used several different kinds of coaches, but I've had a mindset coach at one point, and she really challenged me to say, I was always thinking of money as finite. You've got a certain amount and you've got to spend it in this way. And she was like, no, it's infinite. And I'm like, it is not. And so we really worked back and forth with that. And once I finally got over that hump, and her theory was, you can always make more money. Like that's what she thought. And now I'm kind of at that point where I'm like, oh yeah, you can, but I want to be able to use it in the way that makes sense to me.
Right. Yeah.
And I think
Exactly.
there's no right or wrong answer.
Yeah. Understanding your goals and working backwards is the approach I take, and how I even talk to my own clients about setting marketing budget, because they're like, I don't know, you tell me. And I'm like, well, what does the rest of your revenue, what's your P&L look like? How do we make sure that what you're spending is A, feasible, B, impactful, and C, something that you think you can do again next year if it works. And so I have no business giving people tax or budget advice, but I find myself having very similar conversations with our clients about marketing budget, because they're like, isn't that like a fictional, like weird woodland character that lives somewhere where we don't actually spend money, but we just get marketing? And I'm like, no.
Well, and I think the other piece to what you're saying is you got to work on your business too.
Yeah.
So I was of that, we launched our first website and it was not fabulous, but it got us started, right? And then we just launched a new one and I was like, oh, wow, this is actually getting us leads. Our old one never did. So
Mhm.
it has already had a return on investment. So it's
Yeah.
looking at those things. And while it feels kind of icky spending the money sometimes, you have to look at the bigger picture.
Gotta pay to play.
Yeah.
What's a common tax misconception that you find yourself enlightening your clients about?
Oh my gosh, I could go on forever about these.
All
The
of them?
current one, don't look at your social media to get tax advice.
Oh, yeah. The TikTok heroes of the world. Yep. Mhm.
There's a good one out there right now that everybody should be an S Corp if you are a small business owner. And I would argue that you need to do the numbers, that every single person is different. I just did a comparison um, a couple weeks ago and I pulled up, one person and it didn't make sense for them. They were actually going to be spending more money. And then another person, they were going to save $6,200 in tax. So it's all about facts and circumstances, which
Right.
you can't get off of social media or AI.
So funny. Speaking of AI and younger generations that are adapting to that very quickly, if you're working with younger people, younger entrepreneurs, startup companies, or maybe younger folks that have inherited a business, a small business, what practices are you encouraging them to take to support their personal and business financial health?
Um, I think just look around. You got to get advice from how others did it, and then you've got to take your own approach. So, there is something to be said for those that consistently do a little bit every day and get you there. I think you want to challenge what's out there, but I think you want to use the technology that's out there too. So I think there are good pieces to AI. I'm using some now. I just started making video synopsises for my clients of their tax returns.
Mhm.
Um, but you got to take those pieces and realize that not everything can be done by AI, and there's some human interaction that people
Right.
need and crave at the same time. So you got to
Yeah.
balance that out.
The way that I talk about AI is that it's a tool for expediency, and it's not the solution. And
Yes.
you have to have some level of human element involved in the upfront of the prompting, and then the back end of the like, none of that makes sense, so I'm gonna have to edit this by myself. What's some advice that you wish someone had shared with you about your financial well-being when you were younger?
I'd go back to consistency. So, I grew up pretty poor. My parents argued about money constantly to the point where my mom would be like, "Don't tell your dad I spent this amount of money." So I put myself through college and I was like, "Oh, I don't know if I'm ever going to get there," but my older self will tell my younger self, consistency is key. If you can't save the full amount to your 401k, save a little bit, If you can't pay all your student loans, just pay a little bit more. And I think that works out in the end.
Yeah, just start, you
Just
know.
start.
If my internet sleuthing serves me correct, you worked in your family bookstore at the start of your career?
I worked for a family friend that had a bookstore. Yes.
Aha, internet sleuthing led us astray. So that was my very awkward segue, Katrina, into this question. What are some books that have had
Oh
a very
gosh.
a big influence on your professional or personal life?
So I am an avid reader. I read all the time and they change constantly. But my current favorite nonfiction author is Morgan Housel.
Hmm.
He wrote two books, one called Psychology of Money, which sounds boring, but it was actually chapters about little stories about people.
Hmm.
Um, and then he just wrote another one called Same as Ever. I don't know if you know this one, but
Oh,
everybody needs to read it. It basically talks about how if you stay in the same place all the time, you're never going to learn something else. And he
mm,
uses the same kind of approach where it's like little stories that tell a bigger story in the end. I love him. Um,
cool.
and then right now I'm reading Down to 40 Hours, which is a book about how CPAs need to work less hours. We'll see how that one works.
I think everyone needs to work less hours.
Yeah, it's an interesting
Um,
concept. We're going to figure that out. And then I'm reading Women, Money, Power by Josie Cox while listening to it on Audible. So I'm
yeah.
all over the place. I'm one of those people that'll read, like, have four books. It just depends on where I'm sitting, which one I'm reading.
Wow. Yeah, I can do that with shows on streaming platforms, but I cannot do that with books. I have to eat it alive, finish it, put it away, and then I can start a new one. Um, but that's just how my brain works. And speaking of women, I love, obviously we're a woman-owned business. I love supporting and mentoring other women in business. What's some advice that you give to women in particular when they're looking to grow their business or take leadership roles in finance and accounting?
Just do it. I say this to so many people all the time, especially women. And I'll say it because I am one too. I'm like, just stop being a woman. Stop thinking about it. Stop thinking about all the things you have to do. Just move forward. Like, take the leap. It'll be the best thing you've ever done.
I'm going to go out on a limb here and assume, maybe I shouldn't assume this, that accounting is fairly male dominated of an industry.
Truth. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and I think the other piece is find your support. Like, I think that was the number one thing I needed is
Mm.
a village, a business village, a personal village. I have a bunch of different ones. I spend time, when I walk the dog, I walk with a friend so that I can talk to someone and kind of bounce ideas off of it. And I think we as women need that collective support.
Yeah. The community. And there's also, I'm guilty of this myself. I internalize a lot,
Hmm.
mostly because I'm trying to not burden anyone with my issues. Classic female trait. And I'm like, I don't want to seem weak if I can't do it.
Right.
As a independent entrepreneur, starting a successful business for 7 years. If I ask this question, everyone's going to know that I'm a fraud, which is borderline imposter syndrome. And I have learned that by continuing to just vocalize what I'm doing, it does one of two things: validates what I was thinking in the first place, or it gives me a little bit of a soft redirect if I'm heading in the wrong direction. And both of those things are incredibly valuable to me and do not at all discredit me as a person or as a professional.
Yeah, and I think it goes even further. Like, put your dream out there because you keep talking about it and it's eventually going to come true. So
Yeah.
I tell everyone the hardest thing I ever did was walk away from my W-2 job. The
Mm.
best thing I ever did was walk away from my W-2 job.
Yeah. I cannot imagine working anywhere else for anyone else but myself at this point. And thinking about the future, what excites you most about accounting and finance and where we're headed down the road? Where do you see the industry heading?
I think AI is going to take a lot of the mundane stuff out of the picture, which is kind of nice. I think it's going to be more problem solving and community building. So we're actually here at OnPoint looking at building more of that community so that it is a place where you can bounce ideas off someone, or you can ask for advice about how to look at your financial statements, or you can get that tax advice, or whatever the piece is, putting it all together in one spot.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. And I sleep well at night that AI won't replace what we do at Mill and Co, but it will definitely expedite some of those mundane, repetitive, redundant tasks that are just making us operate at a much faster scale. Um, my hope for accounting, tax, industry world, financial planning is that colleges kind of get their shit together and start to educate young people of like, hey, so you're gonna go get a job. You may have little side jobs here and there, but you might go get like a real full-time job. Here's things you need to know. Oh, by the way, here's how you set up a 401k. Do you know what a Roth IRA is? Like the fact that that is not a mandatory class. You can tell I'm really passionate about this. I've brought it up twice now. Is just, it blows my mind. I think it's such a disservice to young people.
Well, I think, and nobody knows. It's funny. My husband also owns his own business and hired a new employee. And he was talking to me about something the other day. And he's like, yeah, I didn't even know what to do with my W-2. And I was like, okay, so we've got to step back. And I said to him, I was like, why don't you come over on Saturday night and we'll like go through this? Like, we'll have dinner. I'll show you what you need to do. But yeah,
Right.
he had no idea.
How would you, unless you're, if your parents don't teach you, or your guardian or whoever you are with, a mentor isn't showing you, telling you, teaching you, if your employer isn't doing that, then you're like, I have this weird PDF in my email. Do I delete it?
Yeah, yeah, and he's 19, so it's that prime, like, you know, spot.
Yeah, yeah, we're doing a disservice to our young folks here.
Yeah.
What's a lesson that you've learned in your career that you think everyone, regardless of their profession or industry, should know?
Do something hard that challenges you. I worked for a firm where I was the youngest person there, and I also had the office at the bottom of the stairs. So the office manager and I kind of talked about how the shit kind of runs downhill, pardon my language. Um, but I took all the stuff that people didn't want to do,
Mm,
and while it seemed hard at the time, it has brought me to a place where I just can problem solve a so much faster, and I can take a situation and be like, oh yeah, I've done that before. It was really hard then, but I can show you how to do that now. So
right.
take those challenges, even if they seem bad, they're going to get you somewhere.
I love telling the young folks who I mentor, um, you're never going to know your potential until you stretch at the seams a little bit.
Yes,
And
I love that.
the way to do that though safely is you have to at first align align yourself on what your boundaries are, because you can stretch to the point of breaking, right? But if you put some little, bowling ball bumpers up around, you're like, okay, well, I'm not going to go outside, I'm not going over there, and I'm not going to go, I'm right in the middle, but I'm going to go down this lane and I'm going to try to knock all those pins over. And I have found that there's a lot of, especially in young women, fear of failure, fear of looking incompetent, fear of other people being right that we were wrong, and honestly, 99.9% of that is just internal bias. Has nothing to do
100%.
with how other people feel about us. We're setting those restrictions on ourselves. And so that's the advice I give to people, even not young folks, but older clients that we're working with. Like, hey, I know that spending more on marketing is scary. I know that rebranding your company that's been around for 50 years seems daunting. But if no one knows who you are, if there's no brand recognition, if you've never tried this before, but what you were doing isn't working, it's time to stretch. Not to the point of
Yes.
breaking, but to the point of growth. Like, think of muscle tendons. If you're lifting, you're actually deteriorating the muscle a little bit. I have no business talking about muscles, for the record. Please don't come to me for fitness advice. But then you give time to heal, right? And then it can continue to expand and grow, and you feed it with protein. And now all of a sudden, you're like, wow, I'm like way stronger than I thought I was.
Yeah, and I'd say ask questions, ask questions, ask questions is the second one. I had a mentor. I still call him. I don't work for him anymore, but I still call him sometimes and I'm like, "Hey, what do you think about this situation?" And I learned so much just by sitting close to his office and listening to how he interacted with people.
Mm.
So find that person and become the sponge.
Yeah, love that. Become the sponge. So, Katrina, bring us home. What's one piece of advice you want to share with anyone that's looking to navigate their financial future?
Consistency is key, even if it's a little bit, like I said before. And I live by this daily all the time. So find something that works even a little bit for you. Find that budget personally or professionally, and you don't have to stick to it. It is a moving piece of, um, I don't know what you want to call it. It is moving, it changes just like anything else, but stick with it, try it. Because what I will say is, I have found that money equals choices, and
Mm.
good or bad, the the more you are aware of what you have, the more choices you have.
Oh, I love that. Money equals choices because so many times people equate money with happiness. And I argue with people that say that because I'm like, you can have a ton of money and still be pretty miserable, right? You can. But
A
if
hundred
you
percent.
if you
But you
have
have a choice to do something else. And if you don't have the money, you're stuck with whatever it is that you're doing.
I love that reframing. Money is choices. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
If you like
Thank
manage
you.
money and help people manage their money and taxes and stuff, you should. Well, Katrina, thank you so much for coming on to chat with me. I really appreciate it. This has been such a great conversation. For anyone that is watching, please connect with Katrina on LinkedIn. Please check out her business. They'll be tagged in our social copy. And Katrina, thank you so much. I
Thank
loved the
you.
conversation.
Have a great day.
All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning into The Mill. We'll see you next time.